we do have some breaking news, and it comes courtesy of a tweet by J.J. Watt. He tweeted out a picture of his wife, Keelia, and his child, Koa, and then a family picture as well with he and his mother, and I believe his father. The tweet reads, Koa's first NFL game, my last ever NFL home game. My heart is filled with nothing but love and gratitude. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure. Read between the lines, J.J. Watt announced his retirement with a couple of games left to go for the Arizona Cardinals this season. And what a career. 3-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year, all right here in Houston. 5 times first-team All-Pro, second-team All-Pro twice, a 5-time Pro Bowler, member of the 2010 All-Decade team, Walter Payton Man of the Year winner after raising millions for Houston following Hurricane Harvey. First reaction to this, it is a bummer that he is not doing this here. It really is. It's one of the worst parts about the last couple of seasons is that Bill O'Brien made it intolerable for J.J. Watt to the point where Watt asked out and got out. But I want to focus on the positives. This is the best defensive player I've ever seen firsthand. And I know that there are a lot of other players that we're going to think back at historically as far as who's the best defensive player ever. I know Aaron Donald is giving Watt a run for his money this past decade. Lawrence Taylor, a lot of people will bring his name up. Reggie White. There have been tons of great defensive players over the course of the NFL's history. But this was the first nationally relevant player for a Houston Texans franchise that for most of its history has been desperately clawing for any sort of relevance. And I know for some it was a tad insufferable, this Midwestern Captain America routine that it appeared J.J. Watt was just constantly in the midst of. You always wanted him to be a little bit more real. But I do think that over the course of his career, he did open up a little bit more. And I also think that this was actually just who he was. Sometimes people actually are good. It can be difficult for a skeptic like myself, a cynic like myself, to look at that at face value and say, yeah, this is all 100% authentic. And of course, there was a little bit of corniness with J.J. Watt. We all remember that Hard Knocks scene with Fort Minor playing in the background where he's pushing a tire across the field and working long after practice with no lights on the field, going up against a blocking sled. There was always a little bit of that with Watt, but this guy was incredible. I mean, the first great moment in this franchise's history, the one that plays in this city, was J.J. Watt intercepting an Andy Dalton pass in the Texans' first ever playoff game that brought the house down at NRG Stadium. It was so loud after he got that pick six. I am bummed out that that is one of the few Texans games I actually was not in attendance for. But that was simply the best moment in franchise history. I don't think there's anything else that you could really point to. There was still excitement. The city had not gotten to the point where they are at right now, where I think a lot of people just don't want to hear about him. But J.J. Watt retiring, and what a career it was. You do wonder what could have been had the injuries not taken their toll, but I'm assuming that's one of the reasons that Watt is making the decision. I would assume the other reason is as well that the Arizona Cardinals, oh boy, it's been a rough year.
That's what bums me out the most. That J.J. Watt, his last 2 years, he was wasting his time on the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
The Bills or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
even the Packers, he at least would have had one meaningful year.
And it would be his home. You're right, Sean. Had he retired in Green Bay,
Literally went to a retirement destination, Arizona.
Well, I mean, I have no problem with going to Arizona, Scottsdale, but we're also talking about not single J.J. Watt. We're talking about father J.J. Watt.
Yes, and you're also not one of the greatest defensive players of all time.
Well, I don't know. I think we
in
could.
NFL history.
Thank you. Small,
single A,
whatever
school,
our district was,
Florida, yes.
in the Shorecrest Preparatory School Chargers. Listen, you'll find my name in the first team all district rankings. J.J. Watt and I have a lot in common. But J.J. Watt retiring, it is interesting just to go back to the beginning of his time with the Texans. Everyone was so pissed when he got drafted. Remember the 2011 NFL draft? I mean, that moment went viral. The pick of J.J. Watt being booed. And, I mean, if you take a look at that 2011 draft, Cam Newton, first overall, Von Miller, second overall. Those picks worked out pretty well. Go down a little bit further. A.J. Green, Patrick Peterson, Julio Jones, Aldon Smith, the name that the Texans were linked to, Tyron Smith with the Dallas Cowboys, still in the league. The top of that draft was a very good one. So to get somebody as good as J.J. Watt at that 11th spot was a godsend for the Texans. And it is where they officially flipped the script and became a playoff team. Like, that moment in time signifies a change from the previous decade of Texans football, which, of course, was, I guess, what you would expect from an expansion football team. I know it's a little bit different with what you'd seen the previous decade with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who made it to the AFC Championship game their second year of existence. I think the Carolina Panthers, they made it to the NFC Championship game their second year of existence, but they also, I think, were 8-8, maybe 9-7. Their first ever year. Like, those two teams, they got the ball rolling a little bit more quickly. It took the Texans a while. It's taken the Texans a while probably to get back to that phase. But, I mean, this is the most important player in the Texans' history. I do hope that whatever sour feelings he might have had towards the organization, very merited ones, can be forgotten. And that this guy is maybe not a Houston institution going forward. I don't know that he's going to move back to Houston, but I do hope that this is a guy that makes his face shown here from time to time. I think that this fan base does very much appreciate everything that Watt did for this city. And, man, it's a bummer. This is a guy who, do a little math here, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2021, 22. So we're talking about an 11, 12-year career? And I think that's a damn good one. It's a bummer that we're probably going to see more players like this, specifically on the defensive side of things, that maybe walk away a little bit earlier. We've seen it, of course, at the linebacker position, all those guys on the 49ers, Patrick Willis, Chris Borland, among others. But the guy had an incredible career. J.J. Watt got 13 of 50 MVP votes in 2014. It was the closest that any player had come to winning the MVP as a defensive player since 1986 when Taylor won it. He announced that this will be his last season earlier today. 2014 was ridiculous. And here is what Watt was able to do over the course of that year. 20 and a half sacks, very close to breaking the record. 29 tackles for a loss, 51 quarterback hits, 80-yard interception return for a touchdown, a 45-yard fumble return for a touchdown, a safety, 3 receiving touchdowns, defensive player of the year, and second in MVP voting. That's my favorite memory of J.J. Watt. Just that entire season. Because you knew that team wasn't going anywhere. Ryan Fitzpatrick was the quarterback. Ryan Mallett was someone who got a little bit of time before the end of the year. They turned to TJ Yates. They turned to Case Keenum. It wasn't a great season offensively, but you never knew what the hell J.J. Watt was going to do in a given game. And the amount of touchdowns that he scored, I mean, the guy scored 5 touchdowns. 3 of them on offense as a defensive player. 2014 was a lot of fun. It's a tragedy that the Houston Texans became such a poop show that JJ asked for his outright release. we will probably see less and less of players in the NFL playing for one team the entirety of their career, unless they end up retiring early, like we're seeing with J.J. Watt. But J.J.'s doing that in Arizona. Think about it from this perspective. Usually, the reason that a player who is considered a franchise great moves on from the team that he spent his entire career with is because that team looks at him and doesn't see him as the player he used to be. They, the team, break up with the player. And J.J. Watt broke up with the Texans because he was so disgusted by what they had become. That is just a tragedy. And it's not like J.J. Watt didn't have his reasons for it. I mean, how much did the guy go through with that team? The many downs of the Bill O'Brien era, especially at the very end. His reason for asking for a release was merited. It wasn't like with James Harden, where the Rockets did everything they could, not for the betterment of the team, but for the appeasement of Harden. The Texans just did so many things to disgust Watt to the point of asking out of town. He broke up with you. And that is rare that happens in the NFL, at least with successful organizations. That is the best player in your franchise's history. And he, like Andre Johnson, at least for a time, decided, I want to distance myself from the organization that brought me into this league, where I was able to create a massive fan base for myself. And I know those fans will stay with me when I ask out or when I walk away. To an extent, they stayed with Andre. People did get mad about the fact that he signed with the Indianapolis Colts. I thought it was kind of ridiculous that they got mad at him. I think Andre had some pride issues when they told him, yeah, you're only going to get like 40 receptions or so this coming season. And then, by the way, O'Brien ended up being right on that decision. But then afterwards, too, with the Jack Easterby stuff where Andre Johnson walked away from the organization again, that made a lot of sense. And J.J. Watt walking away from this organization, that made a lot of sense, too.